Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel, where truth shows up when you least expect it. She didn't see me walk in, which was strange, because she always claimed to have a sixth sense when I was nearby. Said she could feel me before she saw me. I guess that only works when you aren't laughing at some guy's joke, fingers brushing his wrist like it's second nature. Her hair was curled. She only curled her hair for job interviews, or no? No need to guess. I already knew. The way she was smiling with her whole face, not the tired, lifeless smirk I'd gotten used to at home. No yoga mat in sight. No phone glued to her hand. Just her and him and two half-empty lattes between them like they'd done this 100 times before. The cafe smelled like burnt espresso and betrayal. I didn't hesitate. I didn't freeze up or second-guess. I walked right to the counter, borrowed a pen from the cashier, ripped a piece off a brown paper napkin, and scribbled, "Don't come home." No explanation. No drama. Just 5 words, underlined once. I walked over, calm, invisible, like a ghost in my own life, and slid it across her table, right beside the sugar packet she was fiddling with. She looked up mid-laugh. Her smile dropped off her face like a shattered plate. I didn't wait for her to say anything. I didn't care what she'd say. What was left to explain? I left the cafe. 3 hours later, I learned what she did next. And it was worse than I ever imagined. By the time I reached my car, my hands were cold and clammy. I just sat there with the engine running, staring out the windshield like the world outside had stopped moving. A part of me was still expecting her to come running after me, maybe crying, maybe yelling, anything that showed she cared. But nothing. I waited 10 full minutes. Then I drove home. I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the driveway, chewing on the corner of my thumb like I used to do in high school before tests. Our front porch light flickered. It had been doing that for weeks, and I kept telling myself I'd fix it. I stared at that stupid light for a long time, thinking how much of my life had become this. A list of things I kept meaning to fix while everything slowly fell apart. When I finally walked in, the house smelled like the lavender candle she always burned when she wanted to relax. I felt nauseous. I tossed my keys into the bowl, walked straight to the bedroom, and opened my drawer. I didn't pack. I wasn't ready to be that final yet. But I pulled out the manila envelope I had hidden behind my old college notebooks. Inside were copies of our mortgage, bank account statements, and passwords, things I had been quietly collecting ever since the distance between us stopped feeling like a phase and started feeling like a choice. I was midway through logging into the joint account when my phone buzzed. One text. From Avery, my wife's sister. "Hey, you might want to check her story. I'm so sorry." My stomach dropped. I opened the app, and there it was, a freshly posted video of her and the guy from the cafe, laughing, clinking glasses in what looked like a rooftop bar. She was wearing the same outfit, her makeup now slightly smudged from the hours that had passed, but still looking like she hadn't skipped a beat. The caption read, "Finally living life. No more secrets." My heart felt like it was being slow-cooked. It wasn't just betrayal, it was performance. It was mockery. She knew I'd see it. Maybe she wanted me to. Maybe she thought I wouldn't care enough to look. Or worse, maybe she thought I was too weak to do anything about it. But then I noticed something in the video that made my breath hitch. He was in our house. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. I paused the video and scrubbed back 10 seconds, just to be sure. But there it was, that crooked lamp in the corner. The exact one she insisted on keeping, even though the base was chipped. The same throw pillows I hated. And then the final confirmation. Our wedding photo, slightly blurred in the background, tilted the same way it had been for weeks. My living room. My home. She brought him into our house. My throat tightened like someone had shoved a fist through my chest and was slowly closing their fingers around my windpipe. I could have taken her lies. I could have stomached the betrayal. But this was something else. This was desecration. She didn't just cheat. She invited him into the one place that was still supposed to be mine. Our home. My safe space. My sanctuary. I stormed back into the living room, looking around like I expected to find remnants of him. A jacket, a shoe, a scent. Nothing. Everything was in its place, and yet nothing felt right. I sat down on the edge of the couch and stared at the screen door. She must have brought him in while I was at work. Did he sit on this couch? Eat at our table? Touch the remote I always lost. My hands began to shake. I opened our security app, something she always ignored because she hated being watched. I checked the logs. Motion detected in the living room. Yesterday, 9:48 p.m. Video available. I tapped play. There they were. She walked in first, heels in one hand, laughing like a teenager sneaking into her parents' house. He followed behind, comfortable, confident. He kissed her neck. She didn't resist. They sat on the couch, my couch, and shared a bottle of wine from the rack I'd been saving for our anniversary. Then she did something that made me feel like my soul cracked in half. She handed him one of my sweatshirts. Not just any sweatshirt, the one I wore the night I proposed to her. She smiled when he put it on. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to count how many lies it took to build the version of her I thought I knew. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw that sweatshirt on him. It was too much. Not because of the clothing itself, but because of what it meant, that she was comfortable enough to give away a piece of me like it was nothing. Like I was already gone. The next morning, I sat in the kitchen long before the sun came up, drinking coffee I couldn't taste and scrolling through memories I didn't trust anymore. Our anniversary trip to Maine. He liked all those photos on her profile. That joke she made about oysters being disgusting. She posted a photo eating them with him 2 weeks ago. My mind kept drawing lines between the before and after, and I hated how they connected so cleanly. Around 10 a.m., I heard her key in the lock. She had the nerve to come home like nothing happened. She didn't knock, didn't call ahead, just walked in, humming. I didn't move. I just listened. She dropped her purse, kicked off her shoes, and headed straight for the kitchen. When she saw me sitting there, she froze. Her face twitched for a split second, but she caught herself, smiled, said, "Hey, babe," like nothing was wrong. I didn't respond. She glanced at the coffee pot. "You didn't make any for me?" I finally looked at her. "You gave him my sweatshirt." That cracked the smile right off her face. She blinked. "What?" "I saw the video. From the security camera. You handed him the one I wore the night I proposed to you." He laughed in it. Then he spilled wine on it. She stared at me for a few seconds like she was trying to decide between pretending it was a joke or playing dumb. Instead, she sighed and leaned against the counter like she was the one who had been hurt. "You were so checked out, Kyle." I was tired of feeling invisible. Invisible. That was her excuse. I stood up, walked past her, and opened the hallway closet. Inside was a duffel bag, not hers. Mine, packed with her things. Already zipped. "I didn't leave that note at the cafe as a suggestion," I said. I meant it. She looked at the bag, then back at me. But instead of crying, instead of apologizing, she laughed, loud and sudden, like I had just handed her a birthday card with no money inside. "You really think this is how this ends?" Her laughter echoed through the kitchen like broken glass skittering across tile. It didn't match the room, the moment, or the silence I had been living in for the past few months. I stood there holding the duffel bag, gripping the handle until my knuckles turned pale. I thought I was done. I thought packing her things, showing her the door, would be the climax. But she made it painfully clear this wasn't the end. Not for her. She didn't even look at the bag. Instead, she walked past me, took a glass from the cabinet, filled it with water like she had all the time in the world, and said, "I hope you're ready for the fallout." Then she took a sip like she hadn't just threatened me with a smile. "What fallout?" I asked. My voice cracked a little. I hated that it did. She shrugged. "You'll see." She didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't beg. She walked into the bedroom, changed clothes, came out in leggings and a sweatshirt. His, I realized too late, and walked out the door like she was heading to a yoga class. No drama, just casual, rehearsed attachment. That was the part that stung the most. But the real damage came 3 hours later. My phone lit up with messages, some from people I hadn't talked to in years. Screenshots. Links. Her social media page had exploded. She'd posted a long, public story. A fabricated narrative about how I was emotionally abusive, controlling, and possibly unstable. Said she was finally free from a man who watched her every move. She even attached a blurry photo of my hand gripping the duffel bag. The caption? "This was the moment I knew I had to leave." It wasn't just lies, it was strategic. Precise. She knew exactly how to weaponize sympathy. The comments were a mess. Strangers calling me a monster. Old friends saying they always knew something was off. My inbox filled with messages asking what I had done to her. Even my boss reached out, awkward and apologetic, saying there was some concern about my well-being. She burned the bridge and framed me in the ashes. And I still hadn't done anything. Not yet. By the time I finished reading the last comment under her post, my hands had gone numb. There were over 300 of them. People congratulating her for being so brave, telling her to stay strong, sharing their own stories of survival and toxic marriages. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight back, but I didn't even know where to begin. My voice felt like it had been surgically removed from the narrative. I hadn't responded, not publicly, not privately. I thought staying silent would keep me above the drama. I believed truth would reveal itself, eventually. But truth, it turns out, is terrible at public relations. Lies. They dress better. They move faster. They get likes. The next day, my mother called. She was crying. Not the normal kind, the kind where her voice comes out in broken syllables. She had seen the posts. She didn't ask if they were true. She asked what she had done wrong raising me. I tried to explain, but my voice caught somewhere between frustration and heartbreak. That conversation left me more shattered than the betrayal itself. But it got worse. When I came home from work that evening, I found a manila envelope taped to the door. Inside were documents from a lawyer. She had filed a restraining order against me, claimed I'd been emotionally volatile, and had threatened her safety. I stood there on the porch, reading the false allegations typed out in clean legal font, wondering how long she had been planning this. How long had I been a character in a story she was already writing without me? She didn't just cheat. She staged an entire collapse of our marriage like it was theater, complete with props, actors, and a villain. Me. I drove to the police station that night. Not to fight back, just to understand what was happening. The officer I spoke to didn't even blink when I said my wife was lying. He just handed me a printed sheet explaining what I couldn't do, where I couldn't go. My own house was now a gray area. I spent that night in my car, in a grocery store parking lot, watching rain smear down the windshield like it was trying to wash me off the earth. And that's when it hit me. She didn't act out of emotion. She acted out of strategy, which meant this wasn't over. The first few days after the restraining order blurred together, I showered at the gym, slept in my car, ate whatever I could stomach from gas stations. I had no plan, just the growing ache of being erased. I didn't reach out to friends. Most of them had already chosen a side, or worse, stayed neutral, which somehow felt more like betrayal than anything. I kept checking her profile. Like an addiction I couldn't quit. Every update was a knife. Photos of her smiling. Inspirational quotes about healing and freedom. And the man from the cafe? He was now tagged in everything. Stories, posts, comments. They were officially in love. Only days after she publicly destroyed me. They even did a Q&A live stream together, laughing about moving on from toxic energy. She wore my hoodie in that video, but I stopped being angry at her. Instead, I became terrified, because the lies weren't random, they were precise, tactical. And the more I replayed everything, the more I realized she had been setting this up for months. She had cleaned the digital slate, deleted old texts, scrubbed her laptop, changed passwords. It was like I had never existed in her story, except as the villain. I tried to gather proof. I pulled old bank statements, tracked purchases she had hidden, matched dates. I even found an old email where she'd accidentally forwarded a flight confirmation, dated months before I ever suspected anything. She hadn't slipped. She was never hiding. She just didn't care if I caught on, because by then she had already won the narrative. Still, I printed everything. I organized it into folders. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I needed it. Not for revenge, for survival. One night, parked behind an old supermarket, I saw her car pull up beside mine. I froze. She got out slowly, heels clicking against the wet pavement, and tapped on my window like this was just another Thursday. I rolled it down, heart hammering. She didn't look angry. She looked amused. "You always were dramatic," she said softly. "You could have played the victim better if you'd just stayed quiet." And then she handed me an envelope. White, unmarked, sealed. Before I could speak, she was gone. Inside was a single photo. Me, asleep in bed, and someone else, her lover, standing over me, smiling. I stared at the photo in my hand for a long time. The edges trembled between my fingers, not because of fear, but because it confirmed something that freed me. I had never been crazy, never overreacting, never the villain. She wasn't just trying to erase me. She wanted to humiliate me completely, to turn me into a shadow of myself. But instead of breaking me, that photo sharpened something inside. I no longer wanted revenge. I wanted peace. And that began by taking my story back. The next morning, I met with an attorney, not one of those billboard guys who promise justice in 30 minutes, but someone who actually listened. I laid out everything. The video from the security camera, the financial records, the public posts, even the creepy photo she left me. My hands shook while I spoke, but for the first time, someone believed me. It wasn't easy. She fought back. She tried to twist every narrative in court just like she had online. But facts have a weight to them that fiction eventually can't carry. The restraining order was dropped. The divorce was finalized in my favor. And slowly, the people who had turned their backs started reaching out again. Not all of them, but enough. I moved out of state. Quiet town. New apartment. No social media. Just a dog named Baxter I adopted from a shelter and morning walks that remind me I'm still here. Still rebuilding. She kept posting. Last I heard, the guy from the cafe is no longer around. Her captions changed from healing to finding herself again. I don't care anymore. That chapter's closed. The real win wasn't proving her wrong. It was choosing not to carry her lies any further into my life. I found peace in silence. Not the kind she used to punish me with, but the kind I built myself. I wake up now without that knot in my chest. I breathe easier. I laugh more. And for the first time in a long time, I believe in beginnings again. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself after someone tried to write your ending for you, share that moment in the comments. What was your turning point? And don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Confessions, because every story deserves to be told, especially yours.